Hi, I'm James from BurntOrangeMonster.com. Today I'm going to show you a wonderful free tool called Posterazor, which I like to use for my tabletop games like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. I use it in my in-person games as an alternative to a vinyl battle mat. Sometimes I want to give my players something with a little more color. Sometimes I've created a map in either Photoshop or Dungeon Draft or something like that that I just want to print out and have on the table. And sometimes, well, my drawing skills aren't the best, and so I would rather use map making software. Don't get me wrong, I think all dungeon masters should have a vinyl battle mat with some wet erase markers in their collection. It's too versatile of a tool to pass up. It lasts for years, and in the grand scheme of things, it's not that expensive. While I've mostly been using Foundry VTT for my virtual games, I've got a long running 5th edition campaign, and then I've got a newer 5th edition campaign that I'm running, and I've been tinkering with Pathfinder 2 with Foundry. I find that I really miss being in person with my players. You know, those players become your best friends. It's hard when you can't, have the eye contact and the facial expressions the same as when you're on a virtual tabletop. So I am looking forward to the time when this COVID mess is behind us and we can all get back together in person. So I'm using some of that time now to print maps. So I'm ready when this COVID mess is gone. What will you need to follow along in this video? Well, you need to download and install Posterazor. I'll show you the link. You need some way to measure the size of a grid in pixels. If you have Photoshop, great. You have GIMP, if you have Pixelmator, if you have any basic photo manipulation software that lets you measure, maybe even Microsoft Paint lets you do that. I don't know. But I'm going to show with GIMP because that's free and open source, and it's a multi-platform. So anybody on Windows or Apple or Linux can use that. You'll need a digital battle map that you have the rights to print. If you don't know where to get maps, there's all sorts of places online. There's the subreddit r/mapmaking. There is all sorts of Patreons. You could even go to MikeSchley.com and purchase some of the official 5th edition content. You can make your own map. You could draw it and scan it in. You can create it in a photo editing software. You can use Dungeon Draft. You can use Campaign Cartographer. There's all sorts of map making software out there that you could use. If you're artistically inclined and make your own map, just be sure that, at least for Dungeons and Dragons, where we're using 5 feet equals 1 grid square, you want that 1-inch size to correspond to at least 100 pixels in your software, and ideally more like 200 or 300, so you'll have a better resolution for print. I've printed maps with as little as 100 pixel per square inch resolution. They've turned out okay. You can tell they're a little blurry, but it's still better than my drawing skills with a vinyl battle mat. I find at least 200 pixels and even better 300 pixels look just amazing. Sometimes the asset you have just won't have that resolution, and that's okay. Don't stress about that. But if you're creating something fresh from scratch and you have a computer that can handle a 300 pixel per square inch or 300 pixel per inch resolution, I recommend using that higher resolution. That said, let's jump into the programs. I'll show you how to get Posterazor here. If you'll Google for Posterazor, it's usually the first link. There's a download link on the left if you'll click here. And then there's Windows, Mac, and Linux versions there. Next step is to get a map. If you don't have one, I'm going to provide this free one in a link. Note that each grid square is 200 by 200 pixels. Now I'm going to show you how to install GIMP, which is useful to make photo manipulations as well as to measure the distance in pixels for each square. If you'll Google GIMP, G-I-M-P, they'll take you to the page, and they have Windows, Linux, Mac versions that you can download and install. Once GIMP is open, you can drag and drop your file into it, and it'll automatically open. I'm going to maximize the window, and then I like to go to the window dialog and open up what's called the navigator pane, which lets you zoom in and out of your map pretty easily. And then after that, I'm going to go find the rectangle select tool, which is on the top left. And then I'm going to blow up the bottom left and highlight a portion because that's where you need to look as you're measuring the square. And you'll see as you start clicking and dragging, you'll see rectangle and then some numbers, and that's telling you the horizontal and vertical width of the square. Sometimes you have to zoom in really close to get an accurate count of the pixels. So you'll see me zooming in close and remeasuring again. Now we already know that these are 200 by 200 grids, but this is just shown in case you need to measure your own map to see what pixel density you have. Once you know your pixel density, you can go up to image and canvas and you can see where it says 200 pixels right there. That lets you know that that resolution is set in the digital file. If it is not, you can go to image and then canvas size. And you can see where it says X and Y resolution. Change that to pixels per inch and you'll see 200 by 200. You would need to change that if you had a different density. Now we'll open Posterazor, and same, you can drag and drop your image in, and then very quickly it will show you your resolution, and you want that 200 dots per inch to match what you measured for your map. Click Next. You can set your paper size. Letters very common in America. You have other drop-down options. This lets you set where your margin is. I like the bottom right, and then this is where you can pick your size. Since we know our map was 20 squares by 16 squares and we're at 200 pixels per inch, I picked 20 by 16. And that'll print over 4 normal letter size pages, and you can save to PDF. I'm just going to call it poster.pdf, and then I'll show you what that looks like. We'll open it up in Adobe, and it'll show 4 pages, the top left, top right, bottom right, and you'll print those on your normal printer, and then you'll trim any margins depending on your printer. I hope this information was helpful and that it helps you in your tabletop games. If you have any questions or any comments, leave it here at YouTube, or you can head to burntorangemonster.com and leave me a comment there. Thanks.